Having a quorum present, I will call this meeting in order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming tonight. Any agenda adjustments?
I have none.
I have none. All right, so this is, with no agenda adjustments, this is a special meeting. There's only 2 items of business we're going to skip through. This is a pro forma agenda. So it's got a lot of stuff on there. They're all nones. So we're going to go right to 6.1, the discussion of the fiscal year 23 school budget. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Public comment. I forgot. I thought of the agenda adjustments and forgot public comment. My apologies because we didn't do the minutes. So is there any public comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, hearing none, then we will move on. My apologies. 6.1, discussion of the fiscal year 23 school budget.
Just bring somebody in here. All right. So, good evening, everyone. We are tonight looking at cost centers 1 and 2. So, cost center 1 is regular instruction. Cost center 2 is special education. From my perspective, we might as well just start with regular instruction and go down the list. I am going to put this up on the screen. If you just give me a minute, because I want to share it out for people at home. Give me a sec here. All right. All right. So, looking at cost center 1. Cost center 1 is regular instruction. So that's where all of our classroom teacher salaries live, our supplies for our teachers. I'm trying to think some other miscellaneous items, equipment, some copier costs, things like that. So, if we want to just start on page 1. One of the things you're going to notice, teacher salaries, if you've noticed, they're up, they're down, they're all around. That's due a couple of different things. A, that's due to collective bargaining, obviously, but B, also the reorganization. So if you remember correctly, last year we reorganized, moved grade levels around, which meant we moved staff around. And so consequently, the budget that we had in place had already been passed. We didn't make those modifications then. We make them in this current FY. Coming up. So all of those things are teachers that have moved around everywhere across the district, regular instruction.
Andy,
Yes.
can we put a little bit more explanation into that?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the second line,
Yep.
you're going to see that 28% increase,
Right.
and that's because we added staff to this school.
Right. Exactly.
That's what I want to get across. It's
Yeah.
not that they're getting a 28% increase.
No.
It's the amount of staff we have at that building.
So, for instance, 030 is the middle school. We moved 5
Right.
classroom teachers into the middle school. So not only is there negotiated salary and benefits there, but there's also the addition of
Right.
those 5 staff. If you look, there's other places where staff are down. Like, for instance, 130, that line is totally cut. That position was moved out to Libby Tozier.
Right.
So that's what it is. I think that's important, Rob,
Right.
for you, for everybody, because the reality is that nobody's getting a 28% increase, and we haven't added any staff in these lines.
Right.
We've got the same number of staff we've had the last couple of years. So thank you, I appreciate that. If you go down to line 16, you'll see an ed tech salary that's new this year. That was, if you remember correctly, I put in this budget, it's a new position. It's a GT Ed Tech 3. So that's the increase there. The line right below it.
Wait a minute, so that number should appear in the increase, decrease
It
proposed?
does. It does.
It does?
At the end. correct, Jess?
Oh, at the end? Okay,
Yes.
just not over here.
Right, because there's nothing prior to it. Do you see where I'm going? It should have said 100.
Right, the
Well,
formula in there would have included that and then popped it in,
Yeah,
right? If, ors, ands in the spreadsheet.
if it were 0.
If it were 0, then, you know, that number minus whatever's there or plus, and you would have come up with a number.
Right, well, it would have been
So as long as
27,000.
get included someplace, so
Yes.
really, on the proposed increase on that line 16, should be the 27,637.
Right.
Andy, what does 950 at the end stand for?
950 is district-wide.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So when I look
No,
at
is
that.
that 95? No, 950 is, it's elementary K-8, 990 is district-wide. 900, excuse me. 900 is district-wide, 990 is 912. Am I correct in that, Jess?
And 950 is K8,
K8.
and 990 is 912.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That just helps me.
Could you just run through the school codes real quick?
Yeah, sure, okay, I know, right?
I
There
feel like
are
we
a
should
ton of
have
them.
them up on the
So,
board or
so
something.
020 is, 020 is Carrie Ricker. 030 is Sabatis Primary.
No, middle
Oh,
school.
Oak Hill Middle School, 130.
We'll correct
See,
you.
this is, it happens every time. 030 is the middle school, 120 is Libby Tozier, 130 is Sabatis Primary, 300 is the high school.
And then you said that 990 is
District.
9 through 12.
9 through
9 through 12,
Yep,
990, 950,
is K to 8 elementary programming, and 900 is district-wide.
okay. All right.
And there
thank you.
are positions that are split between schools, and that's allocated.
They're
It-
broken out in places. So, like, for instance, if we have a UA person who's works in 2 different buildings, we split them out into 2 different cost centers.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, not cost centers, 2 different budget lines. If you go to line 17, you'll see an increase there. If you remember correctly, this isn't a new position, we had to take this on last year because a number of our ELL students went up significantly, so this is an ELL ed tech position that was unbudgeted for last year that we had to have, that now is being put in the budget. Stipends, these are all per contract, things like department heads, team leaders, things like that. Tech coaches, you've got your substitute lines, those have stayed pretty much the same. We bumped a couple of them up just because of usage, but it's really not that bad. If you look down below, lines 31, 32, and 33, and I'm going to scroll here. You'll see those are the retirement lines. So per contract, if somebody's been with us long enough, there is a retirement or a separation incentive. It's not an incentive, but it could be retirement incentive or separation agreement payout for the collective bargaining agreements. If you'll see, the only places we're looking at retirements this year are at the middle schools. Health insurance, you'll see one line, 030, up significantly for health insurance. That's, again, we moved 5 staff there. With health insurance too, you gotta remember, at age 26, you age out for being on your parents, so there could be cash in lieu change or people changing coverages. We have 10% in the budget. I believe the cap is gonna be 8, is what I'm hearing. But if I'm being honest, we can't cut directly to 8 because of changes. Life events happens, we have to leave some in there for life events. Main state retirement, I mean, these are all part of salary and benefits. All the way down to line, let's see. All the way through line 167. So starting on 171, these are certain lines. You're not going to see much here for increases. You'll see an increase on some field trip lines. We're going to do a couple of extra things this year. We haven't been able to do those things in the past couple of years just due to COVID-19. So we want to increase some opportunities for kids. if you look at line 189, we moved 5 staff members to the middle school, and the supplies are up. You'll look.
So where did they, what, the move 5 is, are they coming out of the
Well, they didn't.
192, where the minus 1,300, because that's a big increase.
It is. Yep. So
If
one
the
of-
others are staying constant,
The others
For
are staying
supply.
constant. We didn't have enough in those lines to begin with. We've overspent those lines. So with Carrie Ricker, remember, we moved 5 teachers to the middle school, but we only really moved 3. Because we kept 2 teachers at the middle school to create those essentials. I mean, at Carrie Ricker, to create the essentials classes. So, the middle school taking on 5, Carrie Ricker needed to stay about the same, just because of the increase in cost of supplies. But we haven't had enough. I mean, we're Rob and Peter to pay Paul in the supply lines most of the time. If you look at, let's see, moving on, everything stayed about the same. If you look at line 193, there is a cut to 193. That was the supply line at the high school. Marco, I believe that was because we had a bunch of science supplies left over for the last few years. Yep. So because of the pandemic, we have a ton of supplies on hand for science. I mean, as you know, science supplies cost a ton. They just do. But luckily, we've got a ton on hand. Marco was able to take some money out there. Keeping going with some periodicals. We needed a little extra at the middle school. Like I said, we brought on 5 new staff members there. So we bumped that line up, but we cut down the 130 line just because we hadn't used it. But we bumped up the high school. Marco, talk to me about the high school. It was the social studies stuff, correct?
For what?
Books and periodicals. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you'll notice is line 208. That's a high school line for equipment. So the microscopes, and Marco can talk about this better, are from when?
Close to when the school opened.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, we have somebody
1976?
come in every year to clean the microscopes and make sure that they're in great working condition. And, I gotta say that the science department really cherishes those pieces because they're expensive.
Yeah.
And the last time that we had them cleaned for the beginning of the school year, the gentleman who does it said it's time to start looking at replacing some of them. When I talked with Julie Bushi, who uses those quite often, she said, well, let's try, replacing a handful of them at a time. And, I think we're looking at trying to replace all of them at once.
Well, yeah, and that's the goal here.
How many is that?
That's a great question, Vicki. I don't know if I could tell you. At least, I want to say at least 15.
It's 15.
If not 20.
Yeah. Yep. And they get used. I mean, like I said, Marco said they're ancient. And being able to fix them now is almost impossible. What's that? Well, for pieces of equipment they are. It's kind of like our steamer that belongs in a museum. I'm sure you did. Our copier leases are up a bit. Everything else has stayed pretty much the same. Moving to the back page there, just a couple of increases in some dues, fees, and memberships, but just because the cost of things has increased. This is, this cost center is your biggest cost center. It's up about 7%. A little over.
so when you, on line 168, next time you run this in, if you put the formula in there for the percent of increase or decrease on the summary line,
Yep.
so anytime we have, and it would be the same on 232, so anytime we have, carry the formula on down. Thank you. So, in this cost center and another one we look at, the biggest impact has been negotiated
Right.
contracts, which is, we used to say, 80% of our budget is in
Yeah.
personnel costs, because that's what education is. It's knowledgeable people with a desire and the ability to pass on knowledge or to help others, help students gain knowledge. That's what we have. Those are our tools that we have to provide education. So it is what it is. Reductions mean typically reductions in programs or staff.
Well, and thinking about staff too, somebody said to me the other day about, you know, we've got some retirements coming. We've done that so many times over the last, you know, in my tenure here, just, you know, people retire, we don't replace them, we can't do it anymore. That's just where we're at. You know, our class sizes are okay. You know, space-wise, we're there. But our class sizes are a little smaller, specifically K-5, because of what we did through reorganization and adding those essentials classes.
Andy, are those going to continue? Has there been discussion about that?
The what?
The essential classes, is that budgeted to
Yes,
continue?
that's all in here.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, those have been very, I mean, I can't, Kathy can talk about it, principals can talk about the benefits of those. I mean, you saw the data from them, so, well, very beneficial.
So, any questions? Comments, recommendations? Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to cost center 2.
All right, cost center 2. So cost center 2 is special education. So one of the things to think about when it comes to special education is a phrase called maintenance of equity. Effort, equity, yeah, sorry. Maintenance of effort. And so with that, what that means is we have to spend more every year to keep getting our IDEA funds. We got a waiver last year, correct, Nancy? 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were under a waiver because we didn't. We actually had a cut in special education. So we have to bump this up every year. Granted, it takes care of it on its own. We don't artificially have to do that for the most part. The costs included in this cost center are IEP services. If you think about one student moving in that's in an out-of-district placement, that's potentially $100,000 you didn't budget for. So these costs are all IEP driven for the most part, other than salary and benefits. You know, we can go down the line. Now, one of the things that happens with these lines as well, those of you who have seen a lot of them, budgets over the years, is we end up moving educational technicians around for need. And so they may have been in one place one year, another place the next. Sometimes we have to move people mid-year, just depending on need. So you'll see some discrepancies, but honestly, this budget, for the most part, is salary and benefits. And the first, I don't know, 107 lines are all salary and benefits. If you look on line, and again, no new staff in here. There's no new positions. They're the same number of staff that we have had the last few years in the budget. We did take 2 unfilled ed tech positions out last year, if you remember correctly. So if you scroll down to line 111, that's some public tuition monies for out-of-district placements. That's not all that's in here, just so you know. We actually took $30,000 out of line 112, and we moved it around. You know, we don't, a lot of these lines we've had for a long time. They're in the budget, they're budgeted lines, but we haven't put money in them for quite some time because of moving people around. They'll come out. I mean, we're going to end up taking them out of the budget, but I thought it was important that you see those, that in years past, the last few years, we haven't had any positions there, or supply costs there, but we have in the past. These are lines we've used in the past, but they've been cut over the years. Keeping going, I mean, again, we're still in teachers. You have to remember with special ed, there's resource room, there's different types of budget lines for special ed. All of these people provide IEP services. Let's see, the biggest places to look. So if you go to line, everything else is pretty much the same. If you go to line 249, those are your out-of-district placement lines. We had to bring those up. And I don't know, Nancy, can you talk about what we're looking at moving forward? This isn't the entire cost, because how much do we put in the grant, the IDEA grant,
How much do we spend?
roughly?
Oh, probably around 90,000.
Yeah. So these lines could be bigger, but we are able to pay some of it out of federal funds. But, again, $500,000 doesn't go very far. And so one of the things that happens is with special purpose private schools, if a student doesn't go, we don't pay for that day. So that happens, so we're able to budget a little more closely, but, we typically overrun these lines every year. We just do, like I said, one student moves in and the tuition cost jumps significantly. Nancy and our administrators and our staff have done a fabulous job. We now have a board-certified behavior analyst that's working on behavior plans to try to keep us from putting kids in out-of-district placement, saving us some money. One student not going pays for the services of the BCBA. And I'll tell you, it's tough sometimes. We've got some tough kids. I'm saying it out loud. I've been down to help out on more than one occasion to see what's going on. We've got some tough kids. Staff do an amazing job with them. But at some point, we reach the point where those students need more than we can provide here. We've talked a lot, many times here about potentially starting a day treatment program ourselves. That's about, what do we figure, about $1 million upfront cost, roughly, Nancy? So, yeah, it's not cheap. Yeah, but eventually, it pays it for itself in the long run, but you have to invest before you do.
Right.
One of the things that we are looking at the building project is having a day treatment, some places for day treatment in the building project, because if we can start a program, we can stop kids from going out of
Right.
district. I hate sending kids out of district. I think our students should go to school where they live, in the communities in which they live. But unfortunately, because of the high level of need, we just don't have a choice. And a lot of it has to do with student safety and staff safety. Kids that need on-the-spot therapeutic intervention, we can't always provide that to the level that day treatment programs can. So we had to bump those lines up. Like I said, again, we know what we have right now. That could change tomorrow. It just depends on the day. Moving on, you get salary and benefits for your special ed director. As I said, was it at our last meeting? When we are responsible for CDS, we are going to need an assistant special ed director, without question. Nancy's running herself around like crazy, but with the number of meetings that's going to bring on, in conjunction with the number of meetings she already has, it's just not going to be doable. You will burn people out consistently. So that's not in this budget, but that's something we really need to think about long term. Moving on, if you look, we took $100,000 out of that day treatment line and moved it actually to our psychological assessment line. So as you know, psych assessments, we have to do them. We don't have a choice. They're parts of referrals. They're parts of triennial reviews and things like that. We've had some. We bring in and out. We don't actually have anybody on staff that does them. We contract them out. Correct, Nancy?
Correct.
And they can cost anywhere from $1,500 to $4,000 a piece, or more. It's expensive, And again, we've done a lot of them. I think the pandemic. Nancy and I were talking the other day. The pandemic has has pushed into play a number of referrals. So we have to do those things. Beyond that, I'm trying to think, just some minor travel reimbursement costs, legal fees. We spend these. We do. We have legal fees built throughout the budget for certain things. We spend them. You never know what kind of things you're going to need. If you go to your last page, you'll see where that $100,000 in contracted psychological services in line 335. One of the things is we also pay some of that out of the grant, or the IDEA grant. So that's not the total cost, but it is the cost that we put in the budget. So that's special education.
Have you ever thought about hiring a district school psychiatrist, psychologist?
I think we'd need, what did we figure, how many would we need full-time, Nancy?
Well, even one, I think, would be a huge win.
It would be a win if we had one, but that wouldn't cover it all.
Yeah, it wouldn't really make a dent. I mean, this year, in terms of, if we thought it would do all the evaluations, this year, so far, we have done, 100 and, well, we're waiting for consent on 12, but it'll be 116 evaluations.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, we've been really fortunate. We have two, psychologists
Every
who
year.
have been, contracting into local areas for years and
Mhm.
here as well, and it's great. But there's no way they can keep up with the pace of that. So
Right.
we work with a group out of, Herman area, and they come once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, and they do a whole bunch of kids in one day. They're very efficient, they're really good, they're very professional, and luckily so far they've been pretty inexpensive, so. And we're still, if we were to miss a couple of weeks, we would get the money really quickly. I thought we would be way ahead, and we're just behind.
So, Nancy, do they, once they do the whole testing eval, do they come back and actually talk about the results at different meetings, or is that something that you have to do?
Well, some districts have done that, most districts don't, because we don't have the expertise to interpret the evaluation.
Right.
So we have the two gentlemen that have worked in the district for years, we have them come to the meeting
Okay.
and interpret that outside evaluators.
Okay.
And the reality is, years ago, when I first came here, we did have somebody on staff that did it, but the $100,000 that we
Right.
budget would not pay for one person.
Right.
That's a very, very expensive position. So, we've been lucky. We really have. The two gentlemen that we have are fantastic, and this agency out of Herman has been very good. But, again, they are costly.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Comments? One of those. All right. I do have a question where you went and talked about the ones that are gonna come out of the budget.
Yeah.
You said that we put them in every year and you take them out.
Yeah.
Do we actually take them out of this budget here, or you just don't use it, you move them someplace else?
Well, those lines, they've been in these lines in this spreadsheet for years. We'll just take them out. We don't have money budgeted in those lines.
Oh, I thought there was some dollars budgeted in there, maybe.
No, if you look like,
What line were those?
line 244, 245.
Oh, okay, I was looking down to the next 49 and 50.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I know, this budget is keeping me up at night. It's really, really difficult. Between the increase in costs of things and the increase of salary and benefits. It's really those things are outside of our control unless we want to cut people. And there just aren't positions to cut. And, you go back to cost center 1, with the GT educational technician, that's a new position, it is a new cost, but we way underserve our GT population in this district. Like I said, when I presented my original, the original budget presentation, we could use another full-time teacher. And ed tech is just a step in the right direction.
How much of special ed costs are reimbursed? I know that there's like a whole reimbursement through federal funding, is that what it is? Or am I mistaken by that?
Yes.
Remain clear.
Okay.
Remain clear, yeah. So our related service providers, specifically speech and OT, PC per bill as well,
Okay.
we pay 38% of that if they remain here. So Tammy, my venture system is really on top of that and really making sure people are logging that bill and getting things submitted.
Good.
to that.
And you'll see that that on the revenue side of the budget.
Yeah.
Right,
We
right.
have that there, but over the years, I mean, when I first got here, we were budgeting $100,000 in name care reimbursement. Just what did we bring it down to for this year, just to try to be more accurate? 50 or 60? Yeah, over the years, we had to bring it down because we don't get the revenue. It's not as high as it was. Nancy and I have talked about potentially looking at training some of our educational technicians to be behavioral health professionals, to be able to bill, but that doesn't happen overnight. So, we do get some state agency client money, when a student is in a ward of the state. We used to get a lot. The Beckett House in Litchfield,
Right.
all of those students were state agency clients. We got a lot. We were able to bill for all of their services. But now that they don't have that many students, we're way down. I mean, our revenue this year with state agency client billing is down. It'll be about 75% of what we thought it was going to be, just because of the number of students that aren't state agency client.
So what's left for us?
Let's see, the last two are improvement of instruction, other instruction, and what's the other one, Gus? Yeah, well, that's an improvement of instruction. So improvement of instruction and other instruction.
And the revenue side?
And I will present the revenue side as well. I'll do that at the next meeting. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the plan we had talked about is we're gonna discuss it again at our next meeting. Then we'll have, that was gonna be our last budget meeting. right?
Yes, yeah, and then have a regular meeting.
And at the regular meeting, be able to hopefully adopt a budget to present so that all the notifications and everything can go out. Our phones can start ringing, we can start answering the questions, which we haven't already, and prepare for the budget meeting. And then the referendum. Hopefully once again, the residents that come to the budget meeting will support the budget. Otherwise, if they don't, then we have to take some hard looks real quick on what any amount less than what we are putting in our budget is going to result in, so that we can let the residents of the three towns know what is going to have to go away in order to meet the new number that the budget meeting allows us. We had to do this one year in Wales and then passed at a lower mountain, and I got delivered a petition for a revote. It was a long time ago, and they put it all back in except for $1 or something, because it was this exact same dollar amount. But things happen. As board members, we should feel like we have a stake in this, and that is part of our responsibility to see that we provide what the students need in order to provide them the proper education. With that being said, if there's no more discussion on the budget, then the other business that we have tonight is an executive session. There is no business other than to adjourn plan for after the executive session. You can reclaim the rest of your evening if you would like, or you can hang out in the outer room. And I have no idea how long this executive session will last, but then you can come back in and hear us adjourn if you desire. Otherwise, if I was you, and I was out there, I'd be hitting the road and going home. So thank you all for coming. At this time, I would entertain a motion to enter into an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A with the Director of CAI Personnel Matter.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Is there any discussion?
I know that Diane Whalen wants to participate. Either she's going to call into this or she's going to have us call for this part, if that's acceptable.
She can join the meeting late.
Yeah? All right, you're,
Waiting for this thing. There we go.
the owl has to cycle.
What time were you guys out?
19:04,
Recording in
7:40.
progress.
Hey, all right, so welcome back, everybody who hung around. We are out of executive session. We have conducted all the business that was on the agenda, and if there's no exception, or no, if there's no objection, then I will declare the meeting adjourned.
7:42.
All right, thank you all. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you all.
And you want to speak to Litchfield
Can
people?
you and the three of us chat for a minute?